this one has that feature I was telling you about. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. We've got another Les Paul Studio to talk about tonight. However, this is one we actually have not documented before. This one is called the Studio Figured. Now, as the name implies, it means we get a AA grade flame maple top rather than just your plain. So I would say, first impressions here, this thing's looking pretty cool, kind of a honey burst-like finish, but this is part of Guitar Center's brand new offerings. Launching just in time for Guitar-A-Thon, Guitar Center is the sponsor of tonight's episode, so feel free to use those affiliate links if you decide you need one of these and want to help support the show and tell Guitar Center, send Trogly more guitars for a review. But let's just say, if you're in the market for a Les Paul Studio, it's kind of confusing nowadays because there's 4 different studios. Let's get you caught up here. The Les Paul Studio just recently saw a revamping in what's known as the One promotion. That is the new baseline studio where all of them feature binding on the fretboard, an option previously not offered outside of 2018 and some of the very early studio standards and studio customs of the 80s. But those are going to run you $1,599 brand new, and they're currently offered in Blueberry Burst, Cherry Sunburst, Ebony, Wine Red, and a Tobacco Burst. The next step up in our studio range now costs $17.99, and that's home of the Studio Figured as well as the Modern Studio. The Modern Studios, they have a satin finish, they incorporate black binding with a compound radiused ebony fretboard with a heel cut on the back, and a real mother-of-pearl Gibson logo instead of the decal like we saw on the regular studios. Those are intended for somebody who wants a little bit more modern looks and aesthetics as well as playability. Or you can go for the Studio Figured, which at this point in time, they're only dealer exclusives. Guitar Center's launched this new batch, consisting of a Tri-Burst finish as well as Dirty Lemon Burst. Which I've got to say, I am a big fan of this one. When they asked me which color do I want, that was a no-brainer for me. Some people think of a Dirty Lemon looking more so like this, others like it a little bit lighter. This one just encapsulates all that on one guitar. At the time of recording, the only other Studio Figures that I know about are Gibson.com exclusives offered in Iced Tea and a Dark Purple Burst. If you're considering one of these and having a hard time choosing between those 4, just remember, Guitar Center occasionally has coupons and bundle deals, whereas a .com exclusive, you usually don't get any type of a discount. But from there, you can step up to what's known as the Studio Session. That has another $200 premium, so you're all the way up to $2,000 brand new. However, like the Modern Studio, it's got the comfort cut. It goes back to cream binding, but still retains the ebony fretboard with the same mother-of-pearl inlays. And we have the gloss finish. However, out of all the colors offered on those, there's one called Honey Burst that I was a big fan of and wish I could have reviewed because it has a natural exposed binding along the side. And that's why I was really excited for this Guitar Center exclusive, because for $200 less, they now have one that does that exact same thing. So if you don't necessarily jive with everything else that the Studio Session has, like you don't care about the comfort cut on the back, but you still want that exposed flame maple edge binding, faux binding in a roundabout way, that's exactly what this offers. So really elated to be able to document that phenomenon. PRS has been doing that for years. It's particularly good in the cutaway on this one. Now, if we're being fair, it's not as visible, unfortunately, on the side that we're seeing, but that's going to vary example to example. I think this is a nice looking studio. Full gloss finish too. And by no means was that an exhaustive list of all the differences. For example, another one we might mention, some of those studios have more push-pull pots than others. The baseline studio and Studio Figure just have your inbuilt coil tapping. They don't have the direct bridge and out of phase. So to recap, there's Studio, then you can move up $200 for the Studio Figured or Modern Studio, or $200 higher from there for the Studio Session. So if you're trying to make the decision between a Studio Figured or a Modern Studio, think of the Studio Figured as a limited edition color that you can choose based on your preferences and the addition of a AA maple top in exchange for keeping your gloss finish and a more traditional construction without a heel cut. They're all very similar guitars. It really just comes down to some minor cosmetics, minor playability details, and what kind of a fretboard you prefer. And of course, if you're not familiar with studios in general, they are slightly thinner than a Les Paul Standard, so some guys like that just for a lighter weight guitar. But they're not so much thinner that you really notice it unless you're a real Gibson aficionado. But I'd say right out of the box, this hits the sweet spot within the weight category, where it's not too chunky, it's not too light, it's just right where I like it. I would say this definitely has a slightly slimmer neck profile, so that could be a pro or a con, and this is the version that still retains a Gibson silkscreen. But I just love this natural back. It lets the wood sing, and then you don't have to worry about fingerprints, scratches, and impressions. You just get to enjoy your guitar. I'm a big fan of the Dirty Lemon Burst. But at $17.99, other than the guitar, you also get one of the Gibson soft cases. It has a zippered pouch on the outside that you can fit some things in. And here's our case candy situation. We've got a Gibson polishing cloth. This model does not get the multi-tool, so you get a dedicated truss rod wrench as well as an Allen key adjustment, which if you don't know is for adjusting your bridge. You don't have to use the thumb wheels if you don't want to. We get a basic Gibson cloth strap with an invitation to the Gibson app, as well as a warranty pamphlet, and that doubles as a pre-packed checklist. And if this is too modern of a look for you, you can slap a poker chip on there. I think I'll do that over on the Workbench. So let's head on over there now to learn more. Inside our studio figured, there was good news and bad news. Good news is, hey, look what's hiding underneath our pickguard. Very perfectly uniformed flame. That's looking nice. Bad news is I'm very disappointed. They include the poker chip, but you can't actually install it. The reason being is they're utilizing a flat washer on here, whereas Gibsons typically utilize a skirted washer. They look like this. They poke down a little bit because that helps you grab the threads on a carved top like this. So even though I'm one of the few people that actually wants to install that on here, once you have the additional thickness of that poker chip, no matter how hard I tried, I could not get it to grip the threads. They're just not tall enough. So keep that in mind. If you prefer this look or this look, you're gonna have to buy a skirted washer. But let's dive into our pickups. Did they change anything over here? No, they did not. Just like the regular studio, we're still rocking the Rhythm Burstbucker Pro in the neck, as well as the Lead Burstbucker Pro in the bridge. And within the circuits, I get 8.2K ohms, neck position 7.68, and the middle playing together at 397. However, remember, you've got your push-pull pots, so you can get about half the reading, but it's one of the PCBs. Sometimes you don't get those readings within the circuit. But judging from the look of it, you see the waxy residue right here? That's how you know it was wax potted. So these should, in theory, not squeal on you when you have high gain. As far as the pickup cavities themselves, our Dirty Lemon is marked DL for that reason. And then we've got a star, maybe meaning for plus top, I'm not sure. But we can see our sandwich of woods right here, maple, joining onto our mahogany. Bridge pickup cavities more of the same. LP ST for Les Paul Studio. The G might stand for Guitar Center exclusive, and 25 for our model year. And some more fun look at the wood. Our bridge is Nashville in style with post installed into the body, and it's made of a lightweight material by API. Same thing is true for our tailpiece. Lightweight. As far as our pickguard situation, it's just your regular cream style one. It does have the felt washer on the back, and as per usual, the longer it comes in contact with the finish, the more of a scuff you'll see. So if you're thinking you might like it to be a pickguard off guitar, take it off as soon as possible. Otherwise, let's just take a second to appreciate this Dirty Lemon Burst finish. I am personally a big fan of this. The other color, Tri-Burst, it's something Guitar Center's been doing at least since the early 2000s. I'm not the biggest fan of that one, so I'm glad that they decided to do at least 2 different colors. But hey, if it's been made that long, I'm sure there's other people who also love that color and might be excited to see that on a studio. I haven't seen one of those in the flesh or not yet, but from the stock photos, it looks like maybe they have a slightly lighter red edge, so time will tell on those. But I just love this phenomenon. All that is a clear lacquer over top of the edge of your maple cap. It's not actually wooden binding, so to speak. I'm really happy to see Gibson starting to do this, as well as dealers take advantage of it on their exclusive models. We were talking earlier how these are thinner than a regular Les Paul. It's not by much. It measures 1.85 right here, which is just a little bit more than 1/10 of an inch thinner. But to compound on that, they also utilize ultra-modern weight relief. That's the V-shape pattern with the other little chambers going up. And just because this one weighs whatever it weighs when we do, just remember, they're all a little bit different. There's generally a 2-pound swing with the stated average. You can find whatever you want if you prefer a heavier or lighter example. But moving on over here, it's a regular rosewood fretboard onto a slim tapered mahogany neck. I'd say this board looks much better after a conditioning, which if you're curious, I use the Dunlop 65. You can also buy that with my affiliate link in the description. Also keep in mind, you can buy used guitars with that too. Guitar Center's got stores all over the United States. They've got some nice used and vintage stuff. But as far as the detailed specs, I measure 1.68 inches at the nut, about 210 by the 12th, 0.84 first fret neck depth. Wow, 0.93 by the 12th. To call that a slim tapered C is certainly accurate. accurate. Here's that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Maintains that uniform C shape. Now, how was Gibson's QC on our fretboard? It was pretty good. They've gotten a lot better about those pesky tooling marks on our binding. Now, does that mean that they're not present at all? No. In certain lighting situations, sure, you can still see a little bit, but the only thing that really jumped out at me was when I first unboxed it. It's around in this area. Depending on your lighting situation, it looks like there's a big dip in your binding. Here's a couple of photos. Now, you can't actually feel that with your finger. It's some sort of an optical illusion. Maybe the clear coat filled in the gap that they made, but it is something that I noticed. Also, if we want to get in their face, there's some marks on the nut. Otherwise, on the entirety of the rest of the guitar, I noticed a small contamination over here that caused a small dip in the finish. And this could be wood grain, but it sure does look like a black marker or something got on the wood and discolored it. But that's the extent of what I noticed. But now the rest of our headstock, this is one of the studios that still has the decal logo. That would have been cool had Guitar Center been able to get away with upgrading that to pearl. But then we still got our Les Paul model silk screen and our truss rod with our cover that reads Studio. Flipping on over to the backside, I was excited to have that natural finish because A, it's way more beautiful in my opinion, but B, we can actually see how many pieces studios are currently being. Now that doesn't mean they're all 3 pieces. There could be some variations within that, but that's how I see this one. One seam line running right here, and our other one right there. Looking down at it right here helps that become a little bit more visible, but we still got some pretty nice wood grain. Once again, gotta look at that cutaway again. That's my favorite thing on this entire guitar. Beautiful. I wish the entire edge was like that, but that's kind of luck of the draw. But you also have to remember, it's not stagnant. Like, you got to get the light on it. Even the areas that look a little bit more dead, as you get it in the light, it can also do that whole chatoyant thing. But inside our guts, we got a PCB system that utilizes this style of push-pull pot, and then you just get your regular Gibson branded pots over here. The nice thing is if you want to swap the pickups out for something else, you have quick connects. So you can either buy any Gibson pickup available at a dealer and just plug them in and do the change yourself, or if you want Duncan's or something, you can just snip off the connectors and hardwire it to your other pickup lead and still utilize it within that board. But we've got a plastic output jack plate with our large style strap buttons in our usual locations. Not too much going on in our toggle switch cavity, but I took that off to help me install that poker chip earlier, or at least try to. Still salty about that. And now we can move up the back side of the neck. We already talked about that weird blemish over here. Thankfully, that's on the side that you don't see while playing. And we can see our awesome Kluson tuners. The creaminess of that matches really well with the finish. But you can see Gibson was making those up early. This neck was stamped in 2024 on the 288th day of the year. Initial batch, production number 218. Made in USA, Nashville. I'm excited to see how much this one weighs, because it feels really good. Apparently feeling really good is 7 pounds, 11.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and see if it sounds really good. I don't know about you guys, but I think those sound phenomenal. Tricked ya. That's actually the neck pickup. I was just surprised as you. That's really chimey. Sometimes necks can get muddy. Not the case on this particular one. Now let's try that middle. That is very chimey. Not quite telly, like it's a bit thicker than that. you can get close. And the bridge pickup. But don't forget, you can also do what they consider a coil tap. Which, if nothing else, makes you appreciate the humbucker tone more. Well, that's not to say it doesn't have its place. Because maybe you feel like doing some Stevie Ray Vaughan. Keep in mind, in the middle position, you can have neck full, bridge split, bridge full, neck split, both split, or non. So there's a little bit more than just what you might think straight out of the box. Now let's try some dirt. For me, when it comes to dirty, didn't quite care for the taps all that much, but the bridge humbucker, just by itself, pretty nice. So there we go, the new Guitar Center exclusive Dirty Lemon Burst Figured Les Paul Studio. What are my final thoughts on this? I'm personally a big fan of this new color that they've made. Very similar to Honeyburst, just a little bit different. I'm usually not even that big of a lemon burst guy, but this one speaks to me simply because I just love that natural binding edge as we were talking about earlier, especially right here on this one. But besides just the cosmetics, I just love how lightweight this example is. Not too light, not too heavy, just that perfect in between. I hope one day we get a dealer exclusive that features a 50s neck on a studio, because currently we just don't really have that. But as far as the tones, really love these pickups on clean, and the dirty channel with our bridge is just phenomenal. I don't think you need to swap anything out on these. So if you like the idea of the higher end studio that had that natural edge, and you want to save a little bit of money, you might consider one of these if you're in the market for a brand new Les Paul studio. Once again, thank you Guitar Center for sending out this review unit to me. And as always, even if you're not in the market for a brand new guitar, feel free to use my affiliate links in the description where you can check out Guitar Center's used stuff. But alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking out this guitar with me, and maybe you learned something new, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.